Let's see. Ace Frehley to play socially distanced concerts in August.
Oh.
They're like in Arkansas and someplace else. I mean, they're like actually keeping people 6 feet apart.
I don't know how that's gonna work. Though,
How does that work at a concert?
Especially when you got alcohol involved.
Yeah.
People get drunk. They're not gonna. Oh, they got to high five. That's my favorite guitar solo right there. I got to high five somebody. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you do.
Exactly.
Every time you see Ace, all I see you is high fiving everybody. Oh, he hit the note. He did it.
Yeah, because I'm just impressed that he isn't staggering drunk and playing like he did in the late '80s.
No, he's good now.
Campaign to replace Robert E. Lee's statue with Lake Guar frontman Odorous Arungus garners nearly 50,000 signatures.
I signed up. I signed
Did
it.
you?
Yeah. That would be awesome to see an Odorous Arungus statue anywhere. Put it in my front yard. Cool. I don't care. That's fun.
You heard it right here. And last but not least, Sebastian Bach, once again, Cheap Trick and Blue Oyster Cult featured on soundtrack to Heavy Metal Pinball Machine.
Ooh.
I haven't seen a pinball. Well, I did. I saw a Kiss pinball machine not too long ago. So, that winds up our news of the weird. And
that was metal news.
Next hour, we will talk. No, that was Talking Real Metal. Wasn't it?
What the heck, man?
The heat's getting to me in here, man. It sucks.
I swear.
There's no hookah, and it's just hot.
Did Jim Bob aim one of those farts at you and like knock you out and you're not quite conscious there, fella?
Stupid. All right, so next hour we're talking to Carl-Canedy. Jerry's going to talk to him coming up next hour, and more great hard rock and metal on the way on Rock and Metal Revival.
That's the band Canedy on the Rock and Metal Revival with the title track of the new album called Warrior. And on the phone, I got none other than the namesake of the band and their drummer, Carl-Canedy. How you doing, Carl?
I'm doing great, Jerry. How are you doing?
Doing good. So give us a little background on the band Canedy. And I know you've got a huge background of a lot of other projects too, but what's up with Canedy and how did this get started?
This was, I did a solo album 4 years ago now, and it was a solo album that I wrote all the songs. They were all 100% mine, music, lyrics, melodies, and so on, and I owned the rights to them, and I just wanted to do an album that was about my songwriting. So, it was, and I had a lot of great guests on my album, and I was, really grateful to my friends who contributed their talent. But the main artist, I've produced over 40 albums, and I'm always helping artists realize their vision and so on. But the artist I was was a real jackass.
Oh.
Yeah, working with myself was horrible. I was the worst client I've ever had. And so I didn't want to do that again. But I've looked for artists here, musicians, and there's some great artists in the Scranton area. I'm kind of a transplant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found great musicians, and I've been playing with an 8-piece horn band here for 22 years, the Jeffrey James Band. But
nice.
I never found musicians who were into doing the original thing. And so 6 years ago, Tony Garuba, the bass player in Canedy, joined the Jeffrey James Band. And, as I always say, like Tony somehow got a Black Sabbath album when he was really young. And he went into this parallel universe of heavy music. He never emerged until he joined Jeffrey James. So Jeffrey James is a cover band, and we'll bring in songs, and we'll go, oh, yeah, that was a huge song. Let's do that song. And Tony will literally not know that song.
Yeah.
So the big joke in the band is, Tony, we're doing a song by this band you've probably never heard of, the Beatles. But, he just totally... So anyway, Tony and I were a perfect fit from day one. We just locked in, and we really worked well as a rhythm section. So he, Mike, and Charlie had a band called Totally Lost Cause. They have an album called Original Sin being re-released on Heaven and Hell Records.
Oh.
And so they had done a couple as TLC, and I think Tony and Charlie had another group called Bare Knuckle. So these guys had worked together, and they were still continuing to work, had sort of reunited and were working together. But the drummer was not able to make rehearsals, and they were getting frustrated, and they had a TV show, and the drummer wasn't able to make it. They asked me to fill in, which I did. And it went so well that we decided to start to just get together and write. So we went to this local studio, Cliff Evans owns, and we would get together, try to get together a Monday every week, one night a week. And of course, that's like once a month sometimes, 2 times a month. It's hard because everybody's busy, but nonetheless, we worked. And so after the course of a year and a half, we found that not only had we written an album that we were really proud of, but we were a band. From getting together and playing so much, and writing material and getting to know each other, we'd become a band without realizing it. That's what had happened. Yeah, it was great. And so this whole thing was, I hate to sound cliche and all that, but the whole thing was very organic, and I think it's great that way because it wasn't contrived, and the songs were brought in, and no matter who brought in the material, we all worked on it and fleshed it out together, and it became more of a band identity as a result. And so ultimately it was something cohesive, organic, and I don't know that it would be very hard to try to put together a project like this and not make it contrived. It would, this just happened, and fortunately we have similar roots, but yet we all listen to modern music, so, it just sort of, came together and gelled, and now I think we're a really strong live band, and we can pull off the album live.
Nice.
And honestly, that's not always the case, as you probably well aware of seeing bands with, wow, this is a kick-ass album, and you go, you're the band, and you go, who played on that album?
It's all studio.
Exactly. And, I'm really proud of that because, it was one thing with the Rods, we're a 3-piece band, and, you hear us play, and it is what it is. It's the train leaves the station, and, it gets to its destination without stopping for whatever amount of time. But with this band, there are a lot of dynamics, and I love that because I've had the other as a 3-piece band, and I love the fact that this band has a lot of musicality and a lot of dynamics and a diverse style of music. But yet, I hear a lot of people saying it's like traditional metal with a modern edge.
Yeah.
So, I'll take that. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I like the use of cello on Hell Ride. That's pretty cool with that intro there. I always like the cello. I always it's got such a great sound,
And that's, Tony he decided he wanted to have cello on the album. So Tony, who we joke about because Tony, there's always another bass. I saw this bass I really like. I'm not going to get it. I have a lot of basses. I'm not going to get it. And we all know he's going to get it.
Oh, yeah.
So he was like, no, I'm done. I'm not getting any more. And then just recently came in, I found this really great 5-string Gibson, and, but I'm not going to get it.
I know.
I'm not going to get it. And we're all like, okay, next rehearsal, he'll bring it.
Yep. I saw it in the Warrior video. Very cool bass.
Isn't that?
Haven't seen one like that before.
He has a whole room full of them, and they all sound great. Just plug them in, and they sound great. So Tony decided he wanted cello on the album. So he goes out and buys a cello. Then he finds this woman who, I'm trying to think, it's not Pavarotti, it's, who's the blind singer? Why can't I think of his name?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Bocelli.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, she performs with Bocelli, she performs with a number of major artists, and she's a cellist. So he goes and finds her, and when she's not on tour, he's taking cello lessons from her. And then I believe he bought an electric cello.
Nice.
Of course, he's never buying another cello. He just happens to have 2 now. And so, I give him props for that because that's a dedicated artist. I want cello on the album. To go find cello lessons and take cello lessons and buy cellos, I mean, that's crazy commitment.
And with
so cool.
With an electric cello, he can run that through a wah-wah pedal too. There you go.
He can. He can play it behind his head.
Oh, nice. Nice. That'd be something. So, recording these days is a lot different than back in the 80s when you started doing this. What's your favorite new technology as far as recording these days?
Well, I love I love the whole digital platform. And, I had a 24-track, and I had a recording studio with a 32-input Trident Series 80 console. And, I've had that professional studio before. Mm-hmm. And as things were transitioning into digital, I had an offer on my building, and I thought, I'm not going to make the transition because you can just start doing things at home. And you see where it's come. Like, there are young people out there just making incredible recordings in their bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So, but I really embrace the digital thing, and I love it. And so, for me, doing the, recording digitally is, I love it, and I wouldn't go back to analog, really, unless there were maybe to do some one-off kind of live thing where I would do it with this band, actually. If we were going to record the Warrior album live, I would say if we're going into the studio, let's record it. Let's record it 16 tracks, so it's fat and the bass is super heavy and all that. I would do it with this band, a band that could pull it off live. But in general, digital is so much easier. You can nudge things. You can, you can layer your parts differently. Much more creativity and so on. And now that the technology is there, it sounds great. So it's just a lot of options in terms of that. By the same token, you sometimes, if you're not careful,
you overdo it.
Yeah, exactly. You overthink it, you overproduce it, and you wind up like on my solo album, Headbanger. I didn't quantize any of the drums. I wanted them played the way I played them, and they weren't perfect. And a lot of times I knew they weren't perfect, but I wouldn't replay them because I felt that, okay, that had the vibe I was going after, a couple little warts, but you know what? That's real. I'll take that. So sometimes, and I hear bands on the radio that, put on XM, and I'll hear things, and I'll think, is that a drum machine? Like, it's so quantized, it's re-triggered. Like, is there any kind of, is there a musician actually playing this? So somebody's probably playing a verse, somebody's playing a chorus. It's so precise. It's flawless, and it becomes machine-like, and sometimes it starts losing musicality to me. And I have a friend who used to come to my studio all the time, and he wasn't a musician, but he would ask me, why is it that the stuff I love from the 50s and 60s sounds so great, and yet the technology didn't exist back then like it does now? And I tried to explain to him that there's no substitute for a few large diaphragm microphones in a really good-sounding room with great musicians who know how to play from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, playing together synergistically with a vibe and a feel and a respect for the song. That's what comes across. When you listen to that, you're hearing emotion and a heartbeat and all that and a pulse about that music. You're not hearing, oh, wait, that snare drum could use more 5K. You don't care that it doesn't have more 5K. It sounds a little boxy. You don't care about that. You recognize that the music has such a great feel. So I think that's what sometimes is missing, but I'm not bitching about it because I do my best to make sure it doesn't happen, and I think we did a great job on this album to make it come across as a band and not part it out and with no feel.
Yeah. Also, I did some research, and you produced the first few Anthrax albums, which what is it? Spreading the Disease. I love that album, and that was a big hit for them with that with the video for Madhouse and stuff back then.
It was a big hit.
How was producing them? I mean, they don't seem like the crazy, drunk, rowdy kind of like Metallica was back then. They don't seem like that kind of a band.
They were not. In fact, that's one of the things I'll say about Anthrax is I really respected them and I related to them because I was really driven. I wanted the Rods to have a major label deal. When I met Anthrax, they wanted to be on a major label. They wanted to be a gold or platinum act. They were focused, and they were really worked hard. There was no partying. They were focused. Dan Lilker, great bass player. He came in, and I asked him to play with the pick. Like he wasn't playing with a pick. I'm like, Dan, in order to really play clean and tightly, I really think you need to play with a pick. And you need to get the downstrokes on this. And for him, it was also a curveball, in the studio.
Yeah.
But I saw him a few years ago in Chicago, where they were headlining, and we were right before them for Legions of Metal, I believe it was, or Ragnarok. And he